huge topic that I want to discuss, and it's a very important issue that's going on right now. And is America next? A lot of countries are suffering a huge problem, and that is war, uh, famine, economical issues, and America is not really um, worried about it, but it's more so how long can America last while all these issues are going around the world, right? And places like Mexico, China, certain parts of Europe, they're having, this problem. Whether it's economical issues or drug issues or violent crime. The last time America has suffered any kind of civil war was like, over 100 years ago, right? A lot of countries, all over the world are, having some type of war going on. Take a look what's happening with, Palestine and all that, Ukraine and all that. Here in America, there's really no war that's happening on land, but, we're participating, helping out different countries. But it's like, at one point, well, America, reach a certain point where it's going to collapse, because every single, you take a look at history, and every country that ever existed, every empire, they all collapsed at some point. It's going to be like in our lifetime, what country is going to collapse first, it's a thought to think about, because to give you an example with what's going on in Mexico, all the crimes going on, the cartel issues, there's a lot of things going on over there, and unfortunately, there's a lot of people that I know of who are stuck there, and believe it or not, what you see on the internet is not true. Not everyone's happy over there. You have a president that doesn't even know what they're doing, and so, which leads me to be in contact with certain people who I know of who are very insecure and want to move to the U.S. because they can't handle it. And that's what's pretty much going on, but I'll get into it more later. So here's what's happening around the world. There's a lot of crime going on, economical issues, and really what's might happen in our lifetime, we might see a collapse in a country, right? For example, right now, the Middle East, that area, they're not doing so well. And so, with technology growing and the population growing so quick, I honestly believe that during our lifetime, there's going to be huge, drastic world changes, especially on the United States. And, honestly, that the thing that will come first, what I feel like is like an economical collapse here in the United States. And, I'm not trying to alert anyone or warn anyone or even scare anyone, but, that's like a reality that, we might see in our lifetime, especially with the hyperinflation going on. It's really sad to see so many families getting affected. And, just to give an example of why other countries influence, how America is, it's because, like the immigration issue, a lot of people that come in, for the wrong reasons, and that really, affects how people behave, especially with drugs, gangs, that are coming from Mexico. And, this is the truth of what's happening in Mexico, is that, it's not safe at all to visit or even live there. I have a lot of people that I know that, family, friends and stuff like that, right? That I know a lot of people who are very insecure of living there, and they really are desperate to move here. But they can't because they're being watched by the cartel. They're being tracked, they're being watched, their families could be in danger. And, and money is involved as well. All the money could be taken away. It's definitely a true story that I hear all the time with family, is that, they, for example, they get tracked by the cartel, and, they ask for money, right? It's either you give us money or your family will die. Well, guess what? They don't want their family to die, so they give them all the money that they have. Some wrong person would say, what, I'm just keep my money, you can kill my family. But, that's just the way it is. And so, A lot of countries are suffering a huge issue that, is different from other countries. You know, I know in China it's all about, control and, more of like a really hard control type of thing. Here it's more like an economical issue. So, it's really based on how can we take care of ourselves and, the future generation. So, it's tough to realize that is America really next for a huge collapse in, in an empire, right? Can we see something like that in a lifetime, or even like some type of like strong division that can cause like a major outbreak of war and terror here in the United States? So, it's something to think about, but it's been going on for some time now. But not to get too political or anything like that, but unfortunately, some people just, it's all about technology. They want to focus on that instead of actually helping out the nation, with these issues. So it's tough to hear about it. So how can we better ourselves and to protect ourselves from a possible incoming disaster, right? Well, it's all about protecting our wealth, protecting our money, because right now America is really suffering mostly on the financial side of things. Hyperinflation is killing everyone. Yeah, malls are busy and everything, but deep down everybody just using the credit cards, I see all the time. But it's really, we have to avoid so many things just to survive. You know, um, Especially with the immigration issue. It's really, it could be easily fixed if we get the right people on board. You know what I mean? So it's the big question that a lot of people are wondering is America next for some type of disaster? It doesn't have to be like from the outside. Something, it can be something internal, like a civil war. That was really close when, the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Rest in peace to him. That was really close at one point. But, this is a short video. This is something that I had on my mind. But yeah, I'll see if I can discuss about something else.